Product provided by Nintendo. Kirby Star Allies brings the core Kirby series to the HD realm for the first time. Much like the recent Kirby games on 3DS, Kirby Star Allies hints at its unique gameplay twist within its subtitle. Where Triple Deluxe focus on 3D and Planet Robobot focus on customized mech suits, Star Allies is all about cooperations. Kirby Star Allies' story is as straightforward as any other Kirby game in recent years. An evil force beyond the stars in Planet Popstar sends dark hearts to reign upon Dreamland. All these dark hearts make the previously friendly allies now hostile. Now it's up to Kirby to track down this new mystery foe and return all his friends and the people of Popstar back to normal. However, this is a job more than just for a super tough Pink Puff. Using the power of friend hearts, Kirby can now form allies with enemies and turn them into friends, or I guess more specifically, allies. Together, Kirby and his ragtag team of allies come together to save the day. Much like other Kirby games before it, it's a straightforward plot where the characters are muted, thus the actions of the characters move the plot forward. It's a pretty shallow and minimal story that's just sort of there to fall on top of the gameplay. Kirby Star Allies seems to be a mix of different Kirby games of the past into one package. Where Kirby Planet Robobot focus on mech suit gameplay, Star Allies' bread and butter is co-op gameplay with allies. Kirby's main ability and feature has always been to copy the powers of enemies and then use them to fight other enemies. While you can still do that in this game, Star Allies actually branches upon that idea and lets you befriend these enemies by throwing hearts at them. This turns them into a co-op ally that can play along with you. If you're playing alone, then a CPU will control the ally, but if you have friends around, then you can play a local co-op with up to 4 players. This mechanic is used in different ways throughout the gameplay, the obvious one being that you now have an ally to help take on enemies throughout levels. It's a bit more fun when you're playing with an actual human since the sense of interaction and collaboration with a friend is pretty fun. When you're playing alone though, it's a bit boring because the allies are just so good, which in itself sounds weird to say. How can the AI working so well be a bad thing? Well, when a game like Kirby, which is traditionally pretty easy in the series at least lately, can get even easier by just using the game's main mechanic, it can border that line of being too easy. With that said, the allies aren't all bad, they're there to help you solve puzzles too, not just fight the enemies. Allies with specific powers and weapons can activate certain environment cues that solve puzzles and thus move the level forward. An ally with the fire ability can burn down patches of grass that reveal items hidden away in the background. There are moments where the game will even split you off from your allies and have you independently maneuver a section of that level. Here you're supposed to help each other out by reaching the endpoint of that section, like a co-op puzzle. Even when playing alone, the AI is pretty competent enough to know what it's supposed to do, so even though you're able to piggyback an AI and manually control them, I never really felt like I needed to. Still, it's definitely a feature that's way more fun to play when there's humans around. It's the perfect setup for a party game, but of course that's not always available for all players. The other way that allies come into play is crossing different abilities. During the gameplay, you can raise up your ability and have a nearby ally sort of fuse their power with yours for a brand new creation. It's something reminiscent to my personal favorite Kirby game, Kirby 64 and the Crystal Shards, although slightly different. Back in Kirby 64, you'd be able to mix and match 2 abilities to create a fusion of them. Fire and sword abilities, for example, would fuse together to make a flame sword, which actually happens to be the same fusion in Star Allies. The mixed abilities is a welcome return to Star Allies. I felt like the 24 available abilities were pretty fun and clever to use. The intro animations that show the combination in progress are charming to watch, and the way certain abilities just interact with the environment is a nice touch too. The 7-hour experience, or 11 hours if you try to complete all the game's secrets, takes you across 4 different worlds of fighting enemies and combining different abilities with your allies. Boss battles seem to be the most challenging part of the story mode that put up enemies that focus on separating you and your allies and keeping each other busy, trying to put a constraint on your cooperation. Upon completing the story mode, you unlock some bonus content that adds a bit of welcome challenge to the game. There's a brand new game mode called the Ultimate Choice, which is the Star Allies version of the arena from Kirby Superstar. Here you choose a difficulty and fight a certain amount of bosses that coordinates to that difficulty. There's also a guest star mode that's catered to speedrunners that lets you take a crack at speedrunning levels as guest characters. The speedrun versions of levels are slightly more difficult than the campaign versions and only give you 1 ability throughout your whole playthrough. Not all of the bonus content is challenges though. There's a minigame for example that's more about competitive play than challenge. It's called Chomp Champ and it's my personal favorite minigame in terms of extra content in Star Allies. It has you and other allies competing to chop down trees the fastest while avoiding enemies. It reminded me so much of the 100-yard hop minigame from Kirby 64 that I sucked at so much as a kid, but completely fell in love with. Kirby Star Allies is one beautiful looking game. While we did have Kirby and the Rainbow Curse as the first HD Kirby game back on the Wii U, it wasn't a traditional Kirby game. Star Allies is our first real look at the super tough Pink Puff in all his cute glory, now in HD. The gameplay looks absolutely gorgeous among the 4 different terrains that the game takes place in. Visuals pop in highly saturated color along with the great use of alpha effects like the flames on Fire Kirby's head that interact with the blades of grass in the foreground. One slight disappointment with the visuals is the frame rate. Having gotten used to the 60 frames per second on Kirby Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot, I was slightly bummed to see Star Allies keep it locked at 30 frames per second. It's not a grand problem, but once you get used to the higher frame rate, it's hard to go back. In terms of resolution, the game runs at 720p portable mode with just under 900p in dock mode, though both of these resolutions change according to the gameplay on screen to maintain that 30 frames per second. It should be noted though that the 30 frames per second isn't always solid. There are rare moments where it dips ever so slightly, but not to the point of being a noticeable issue. Despite the lower than usual graphical performance when compared to other first-party Nintendo games on the Switch outside of Xenoblade, Kirby still looks beautiful on Nintendo's new console both in handheld and in dock mode. Much like other games in the series before it, it's full of charm, personality, and cute aesthetics that make watching the gameplay a total joy. Kirby Star Allies makes some great use out of the HD Rumble. There is one specific moment in the game that uses it in a way I had no idea was even possible with the HD Rumble, but let's just say for spoilers' sake, it's one of the best experiences on the Switch in terms of HD Rumble use. Another cool touch of HD Rumble with this game in particular is how realistically it makes you feel like you're absorbing enemies through the Rumble. Your Joy-Cons vibrate in a way to make it feel like there's actually something spinning inside them when you suck up an enemy, even down to the final gulp. As for the soundtrack, it's cute and whimsical as much as any other Kirby game, and it mingles together beautifully with the adorable visuals on display. Kirby Star Allies is a good Kirby game, but there are things that keep it from being a great Kirby game. Kirby games traditionally have been pretty easy, and I've been fine with that, but this one seems particularly more watered down than the recent ones. Usually the things that help make the core Kirby game stand out were its unique feature for said title. Planet Robobot, for example, had the mech suits, and Star Allies has cooperation. Something cool, but not entirely new to the Kirby series. And the same goes for the cross-combination of abilities. It's surely a beautiful looking game despite it not being on par in terms of frame rate with the recent 3DS games, and its music in HD Rumble is some of the best on the platform. That's why ultimately I think that this is just a good Kirby game, which hey, it isn't a bad one, good doesn't mean bad, it just isn't great, or particularly a special one. It's actually something I felt pretty similar to in the recent Kirby Battle Royale game I reviewed on the 3DS last year. That does it for my review of Kirby Star Allies for the Nintendo Switch. If you have any questions about the game or future review requests, please leave them in the comments down below. You can also reach me over on Twitter, Instagram, or my Discord, which are all linked in the description. Highly recommend you do so. If you enjoyed the review, then please consider dropping a like and subscribing for more content just like this, and I'll see you in the next one.